Okay, so now short-term memory, right? Or working memory. Um, so what is the capacity of how much information can be stored in working memory and then, or short-term working memory, right? And then, of course, what's the retention duration? How long can it be held there? So let's look at those things in this video. So back in the 1950s, Miller uh, conducted some research, and he discovered the magical number 7. Right, that there could be 7 plus or minus 2 items stored in short-term memory, is what he called it at the time. Of course, now we call it working memory. Um, so that was the magical number, right? 7 plus or minus 2. And then how long can information be retained there? Well, some other researchers later on, right, were interested in discovering the retention duration of information in short-term memory if we are not continuing to rehearse it, right? So if I have some information I'm thinking about right now, I can keep thinking, I can keep rehearsing it, I can keep saying it over and over, or I can keep thinking about it to maintain its presence in my short-term or working memory. But what if I stop rehearsing it? What if I stop thinking about it? How long is it then retained in short-term / working memory? That's the question. So some researchers later on came about, used an interesting experimental technique where they gave participants 3 consonants to remember, right? Whatever they may be, of course they'd be randomly determined, that sort of stuff. So KFG, right? These are the 3 consonants you're supposed to remember, KFG. Right after you give them the 3 consonants they're supposed to remember, you give them a number. Their task is to out loud count backwards by 3 in that number. So you give them the consonant to remember, then you give them this mental arithmetic task. So, and they're saying it out loud: 100, 97, 94, 91. So you know that they're doing that and not rehearsing the 3 consonants you just gave them, right? And then you interrupt the participants after 5 seconds or whatever and see if they still remembered the 3 consonants that you had given them, right? And so in the book, let's be very specific about this, after about 3 seconds, just after about 3 seconds, just 3 seconds, okay? Only about half the people remembered the 3 consonants. And then after 12 seconds, very few still remembered the consonants. So it seems like the retention duration of information in short-term / working memory is not very long if you're not continuing to rehearse or think about it. Now, if you continue to rehearse and think about it, you can maintain it there. And that's what you should be doing while you're studying and so forth. But if you just say it and then stop thinking about it, I mean, very soon, poof, it's gone. All right? And it hasn't been encoded in long-term memory. You have to keep going over it, right? So anyway, that's the kind of the capacity of short-term / working memory, and the retention duration, very short. But back to capacity, right? We've discovered, of course, that 7 plus or minus 2 items, it's not just items, all right? It can be, they came up with a very technical term for this. It can be chunks, right? Chunks. So I have various ways of demonstrating this. So, if I tell you, okay, listen to these numbers. Don't write anything down. Just listen to this list of numbers that I'm going to say. All right? 1, 7, 7, 6, 1, 8, 1, 2, 1, 8, 6, 1, 1, 9, 1, 7, 1, 9, 4, 1. Okay, now write down as many of those numbers in the proper, correct order that you can remember. All right, you can't do it. All right, you can't do it. I mean, I gave you, I listed 20 numbers. All right, but if you chunked them, I don't know who settled on the term chunking, but if you chunk them right, it's very easy to remember those numbers. There are actually 5 different dates, right? In American, important military dates in American history, right? 1776, 1812, 1861, the Civil War, 1917 when we got into World War I, 1941, World War II, right? So that's chunking. So really the capacity of information in short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2 chunks, right? So if you can see meaning in the stimuli and chunk it, you actually can increase the capacity of short-term / working memory if you chunk it right? So they mentioned that as one thing you might do when you're studying to try to chunk information to remember it well. It can help remember it. And then, of course, then they go into other recommendations for what techniques you can use when you're involved in effortful processing to remember information better. Of course, I already mentioned a couple of those earlier, the testing effect, the spacing effect. They do also mention just hierarchies. By hierarchies, we mean just organizing the information in some way. You know, the chapters in the textbook try to organize the different sections of the chapter, right? They're trying to create hierarchies or ways of organizing the information for you. But if you're studying information and it just seems like a bunch of unrelated facts, that's how it's organized in your memory. It's just a bunch of unrelated crap in your memory, and you're not going to remember it well. You're not going to be able to retrieve it. You're not going to be able to answer questions on the test. So if you just organize or create hierarchies or some sort of organization in the material that makes sense to you, that right there helps improve your memory and improves your performance on tests. So I mentioned that. They also give a brief discussion of mnemonics, which are techniques to improve your memory. And let me see, they specifically mention the peg word method in there, so look at that. And then, of course, you can also create this other mnemonic technique of creating, taking the first letter of each word and creating another word to help code and you remember. So when I was growing up, I remember when I was trying to learn the names of the Great Lakes, I remembered the word home is H-O-M-E-S, right? The first letter of each Great Lake enables me to this day, right, to organize that material in my long-term memory and me remember the names of the Great Lakes, right? Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Homes. Maybe you could do that yourself on some of this material. But I'll let you read a little bit more detail about, the spacing effect and the testing effect. So anyway, that's it for this video.